Go ahead and get started with this public hearing, and to do that, I'll ask Missy Gallagher Long. I told you I'd mess that up. You can come up and give your presentation.
There is a sign-in sheet, that is a requirement, so if everyone here could make sure that you sign the sign-in sheet, that becomes part of your 2022 CDBG application. So for those of you that don't know me, I am Mitzi Gallagher Long. I work for CEDACOG. CEDACOG is contracted with the county to administer your CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Program. One of the federal regulations and requirements of the CDBG program is to hold this public hearing. There are a list of regulations that I am required to read to you. I will try to make this as painless as possible. And then we will open it up to talk about possible project ideas for your selection for 2022. Don, if you could bring up on screen, you should all have a packet as well. And starts out with the agenda. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a history of the...
Mitzi, could you just speak up a little louder?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. The history of the CDBG program, Community Development Block Grant Program, was created through an act of Congress. Funds for these grants come from the federal government through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, to the state of Pennsylvania. PA Act 179 created an entitlement grant program for municipalities, which is administered through the PA Department of Community and Economic Development. Purpose of the CDBG program is to assist municipalities with enhancing the viability of communities by targeting and funding projects that provide decent housing, a suitable living environment, and expanded economic opportunities, principally for low to moderate income residents. The regulatory requirements associated with CDBG funded projects we're going to talk about tonight, and then invite and discuss project proposals for the 22 CDBG funding. Allocations have not been announced yet for 2022. The estimated allocation for the borough is $117,000, and we're estimating that on last year's allocation. The funds are to be used to benefit residents of Bellefonte Borough. Estimated allocation in total for Center County, including Bellefonte Borough, is approximately $428,000. 18% of the annual total allocation goes towards administration, which is handled by CEDACOG through its contract with the county. On the next page of your packet is the application schedule, and that is just some key dates. Today, of course, is the first public hearing. Project selection, I will be back on June 20th, and we will officially select a project. The final public hearing then is held at the county level, and that will be July 18th. Oh, I'm sorry, August 11th. The 18th is the publication date. And then application approval is also by the county, and that will be at their commissioners meeting on August 23rd. Eligibility and fundability is the next page. So almost any project is eligible with CDBG funding, water system improvements, sanitary sewer system improvements, stormwater. I won't read them all, but almost anything is eligible. What's ineligible is any type of operation, anything that's seen as a maintenance activity, any political activities, and any governmental activities. Yes.
Mitzi, can we clarify that? Because council's going to hear you say that we can use the money for a water system, but I want to make sure every time we've ever tried, the answer is, well, the water system benefits the borough-wide,
Right.
and we only have 2 block groups. So
That's the next page.
I just want to make sure that
Yep.
that's understood.
So even though everything, almost everything is eligible, the next part of CDBG is fundability, and that is the next page. With CDBG, you have to meet a national objective. So the national objectives that can be met, one of 3 has to be met. Principal benefit of the project to low to moderate income residents. So that is 51% of individuals benefiting from the project must be of low moderate income. That comes from ACS data. The borough does not have borough-wide LMI status. You have one block group, there used to be 2, but there's one block group now, near Talleyrand Park, that is above 51%. So you can do a project in that block group that would benefit those residents primarily and no one else. If you want to do a borough-wide project, you would need to conduct a survey of the borough. The 70% of the CDBG funds must be used to meet this objective. The other objective that can be met is elimination of slum or blight. That can be spot elimination, which would require a municipal declaration. This is used occasionally for demolition of deteriorated structures, maximum of 30% of CDBG funds. And the last national objective that can be met is response to urgent need. This requires formal declaration of a disaster or an emergency. The emergency has to have occurred in the last 18 months, can only be used to eliminate the emergency. Project must not be affordable from the borough, from your local budget, and a maximum of 30% of the county's CDBG funds may be used to meet this objective. This was the COVID money. This is when we can use urgent need is for COVID projects, or a pandemic, an emergency if there was a flood. There are no matching requirements or expectations, so no matching fund needs to be used. Public announcements that I'm required to go through. The fair housing notice is on the screen. Copy of the fair housing notice, which was run on April 21st, 2022 in the CDT. The county has adopted and published a fair housing analysis, has established a plan to further assure fair housing in the county and Bellefonte Borough. And the notice tells anyone in the county and the borough if they do feel that they have been discriminated against for housing, who they can contact. At the county, the fair housing officer is Betsy Barnt, and there is also a national Philadelphia number listed on there as well. What was that, I'm sorry?
PHRC, Pennsylvania Human Relations.
Yes. The next screen is the county's anti-displacement plan, and I'll summarize. What the anti-displacement plan means is that the county has agreed that no CDBG project will displace any person, so they will not enter into any activities with CDBG funding that would displace anyone from their home. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and its implementing regulations state that no individual with a disability shall, solely by reason of his or her disability, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Bellefonte Borough does not discriminate in access to, participation in, or treatment or employment in its programs or activities. The county and the borough through the county agreed to participate in annual 504 review and outreach, and CEDACOG does this for the borough and for the county. We draft up an annual review, which is on the screen somewhere. The compliance officer and grievance is on the screen now. The county will do by resolution as well. They have appointed Krista Davis, who is their risk officer, to be their 504 compliance officer. So if someone with a disability in the borough or the county feel that there is a building or a program or like this hearing that they feel they cannot attend and they need special assistance for, they can contact Krista Davis. Also, if they want to make a complaint, they can contact Krista Davis as well. And the 504 officer resolution, this was last year's resolution. The county will do this again in August when they pass the final notice for the hearing, and they will be reappointing Krista Davis as the 504 officer. That resolution goes in the application. Section 3, preference. Section 3 states that at the bottom of your agenda, I'll flip to, a Section 3 resident is a person residing in the service area of the project or grantee who has an income below $49,250 one person. Section 3 business concern means a business concern meeting at least one of the following criteria documented within the last 6-month period. It's at least 51% owned and controlled by low or very low income persons. over 75% of the labor hours performed for the business over the prior 3-month period are performed by Section 3 workers, or it is a business at least 51% owned and controlled by current public housing residents or residents who currently live in Section 8 assisted housing. Center County invites such Section 3 concerns to contact CEDACOG's Community Development Program, and upon proper documentation of eligibility for preference, will be provided enhanced opportunities to participate in the federally funded program. And they just changed Section 3. It is exclusive to HUD and the HUD programs of CDBG and the home program. And what that means is any Section 3 worker in Bellefonte Borough and Center County will be given preference for a CDBG project or working on a CDBG project. Sure.
Does that mean that the Section 3 labor person has to reside within the borough, because they be anywhere within the county?
It has to be within a radius. They would prefer them in the borough if they're working on the borough project. And the contractor, when they get awarded, are encouraged and they have goals to meet to try to hire Section 3 workers, to try to give them preference.
Okay.
And then the radius goes out if once you try to get a population, and they just changed it all, so I don't know all of the Section 3 regulations, but I know that it goes out to a radius until they hit a certain population.
Okay.
Okay, that is all of the regulation that I need to read. Today's public hearing is the first step in the process of creating a 3-year community development plan for the borough. As part of the CDBG application process, the 3-year community development plan will be accepted by the borough. Any projects we discuss tonight will be included in that 3-year plan. So at this time, I would like to give council and the public an opportunity to propose projects for consideration. If you want to select your project in July, it does need to be discussed tonight. Only projects that are discussed tonight are eligible to be included for project selection in July.
Start with the streetscape.
I have 2 projects you can
Okay.
throw on the list, Mitzi, for council that they can consider. One would be using another year's funds for the streetscape project on West Bishop and South Spring. Given the way prices are going, we'll have to wait and see. That's just possible. We might be able to use some of that. The second one would be to use some of the funds in Talleyrand Park to correct and fix some of our bricks along the raceway that are a tripping hazard for a lot of people right now.
Would that be seen as just benefiting those 3 block groups, like you did
Well,
the pedestrian bridge?
The first project would be the same. The downtown in Talleyrand Park, I believe, are still in the block group that's LMI.
Okay.
So the beneficiaries would be the people that, that park, that primarily use the park.
Okay.
Plus, I think we could qualify it under, maybe some of
Removal
the
of architectural barrier.
removal of some barriers, correct.
I also think, based on the Talleyrand Park, we have an issue with the suspension bridge.
Okay.
Most of it needs to be replaced. It's problematic, and I think that maybe if these funds if the funds are eligible for doing that, that bridge has been there for 40-some years,
Okay.
and it's reaching the end of its life.
Okay. Is it primarily used, like, can you make it that it's primarily used by just the residents in those 3 block groups?
It's,
We can talk about that.
Okay.
At this point, I think if we could just put it on the list, and
Sure.
then we can try to justify it down the road if it comes to that. But that's also an excellent project for us if we could, if we could do that.
Okay.
The replacement of the concrete surface of the bridge that's missing the concrete now.
Yeah, we will be doing that here in the next, as soon as we get the guy lined up. That's still on we have that task for this year, Doug.
And this funds will be primarily for next year.
Okay.
can you give us an idea of which what the geographic boundaries are of this district so that we can give you a better idea of what might be work? We know it's
Dawn can
Halloran Park.
probably answer that better than I can.
Yeah, if they removed the block group that probably, and most likely what I'm hearing Mitzi say was removed, would have included Blanchard Street, Burnside, that particular area. Sounds like it's no longer in the LMI. So the only other block group that we had that was considered in the LMI group for Bellefonte Borough was our downtown. So that's the area that I think these funds, just like we're using the funds on West Bishop and so forth, it would incorporate that particular, anywhere in the downtown.
I think,
Could-
and then towards towards Reynolds Avenue, that area.
Yes.
Over this kind of that southwest corner.
I'll tell you, I'll be able to get I didn't know that they actually came out with the,
They haven't yet. I was just basing that on, you had 3 block groups for Talleyrand for the pedestrian bridge.
Yes.
And only one of them was LMI. All 3 together had an average of 54.
yeah. Yeah, we had, I can't remember the block, we had 7 block groups in the borough, then they changed it to 6. And for some reason, I think it was block groups 2 and 5 were LMI, but don't hold me to that. But I don't know where we stand. It's been a couple years since I've seen an actual map that, reflects our LMI group.
Right.
So would, one of the concerns we've had here in Bellefonte Borough is the fire hazards of our historic buildings. Majority of them are within this district. Is it possible to assist in putting sprinkler systems?
The borough actually attempted to do that, and Dawn had an approved project that they then came back and said, no, it is not eligible.
Yeah,
Ah, shoot.
The DCED said that, is that correct?
yes.
Yes.
Yes. Mitzi, just in case that we do have the block group that is at Blanchard, like in our streets that's still eligible, I would like to put sidewalk replacement in the scope here, just in case that becomes that we do still have that block group. And then if that is the case, that might be an eligible project that we'd be interested in as well.
Sidewalks you could do, you would have to have a borough ordinance, which you may already have, about the upkeep of sidewalks. Then we would do an actual income intake process of every homeowner. So if they would be income eligible, then their sidewalks would be paid for with CDBG. If they were not, then the property owner, homeowner would have to pay for the sidewalk replacement themselves.
So it'd be sort of a jigsaw piece.
What was that? I'm
A
sorry.
jigsaw piece. Property owner A meets the income guidelines, you'd replace it, but the next door neighbor doesn't, so they would have to replace it.
Exactly, yes. And some boroughs are okay with that, and other boroughs are not okay with that, but that is an eligible project that you can do with CDBG.
What if you have a cemetery that needs a sidewalk?
No, the cemetery would not qualify, unfortunately. Has to be primarily residential. Yeah. And they are residents, but
That's right.
What, I see historic preservation listed on here. What kind of things are typically,
let's see. I'm trying to think of where they did a historic preservation with CDBG funding. If you are in, let's say, an LMI neighborhood and you need to do a building for, like a food pantry, I've seen that one pass through for a food pantry, as long as it's not owned by a government, because you cannot do government buildings. So if the borough were to own the building, they would not allow it. If a nonprofit organization were to own the building and the building needed an upkeep, an elevator, if you have a historic building that does it, again, non-governmental, but it needs to go to the second floor, there's no access, an elevator is an eligible project, that's seen as a removal of architectural barrier because you need to get people to the second floor. So like a library, we've done elevators in a library so that the residents can get to the second floor.
so would the Lynn House, not the Lynn House, but the Historic Museum, would they need something like that? because that's within this district.
We own the building though.
The,
Not-
no, we
not-
don't.
Not the historical.
Library.
Yeah.
The
li- oh,
library.
Yeah, that one you could.
That might be a possibility. They're in the process of replacing the porch. But
Okay.
you can't get up to the second floor in that building,
In the library.
in the library.
Okay. And the library is Bellefonte's library. Okay.
Yep.
So, just back to your suggestion of the sidewalk on High Street,
Yes.
it doesn't qualify because, why?
It would qualify. We just have to do what's called an income intake of each property owner. Because you have to use CDBG funds to, they don't say exclusively, they say primarily, but DCD beats you up, so it's basically exclusively
Okay, so-
benefiting an LMI resident. So if you have property owner A who qualifies, then CDBG funds can be used to pay for their sidewalk replacement. If their next door neighbor, their income is above the Section 8 income,
Okay,
then
so,
it's
but
ineligible.
We own it?
He's asking about the cemetery.
Oh, the cemetery?
Yeah, yeah.
The cemetery, they're not gonna allow you to put a sidewalk in there because they're gonna ask you who it benefits. It benefits all the people that go and visit the cemetery. You don't have borough-wide LMI.
So let me piggyback off of his question. Center County government is planning on renovating Centercrest for additional community countywide offices.
Okay?
They need a sidewalk between the courthouse and Centercrest. The place to put it is where Doug is talking about, next to the cemetery that would go from the courthouse up to Centercrest. Along that street, there are, 20, 30 homes
On the other side.
that are on the other side of the street
Okay.
that are mostly LMIs.
And their property, their homes. Okay. You could do the same thing. You can.
So we could-
Right, we can either survey all those homes.
Uh-huh.
Now, you would have to do an easement agreement. You have to go through a Unified Relocation Act process because the property owners have to be compensated for their property where the sidewalk's going to be placed.
Okay, now,
So-
what I'm saying is that the properties are on this side of the street, here's the street, and here's the cemetery. The sidewalk would be on the cemetery side.
Okay?
Right now, there are no sidewalks, and what people are doing on that side of the street are basically parking as close to the house as they can, because the road is kind of narrow. That would benefit them, but it would be on the opposite side of the street from where they live.
Okay. But if they're going to use it, it's who's going to use it. So who's going to use the sidewalk? Then we have to do a survey to see if those residents are LMI that are going to be using that sidewalk. And if they are, then your project would qualify.
So, that sounds good.
So this is between the back of the jail and up to Badger Lane. And the left, there was a sidewalk on the cemetery side for many, many years, and it got taken out because it wasn't being kept up. So that went away. So it's something we'd be replacing, and it's nothing new. There used to be one there. So as you get up and get to Badger, then the sidewalk switches to the other side of the street, and you get to about 100 yards of Wilson, and it switches back to the left side of the street.
Okay?
So it's a
And
safety issue.
That-
School
I don't know
school
that
students
this is
use it,
accurate.
the neighborhood uses it. There's a lot of people that would use that sidewalk, because there's a lot of people that walk on that road. And that's the catch, is getting people off the street.
Right, so this area would have to be surveyed to make sure it would qualify for LMI unless it's sitting in a block road. Is the sidewalk that's there, because you're saying replacement, I assume it's over 20 years old?
There's no sidewalk.
It was taken out.
It was
Over-
taken out?
Over
Okay.
20 years ago.
Yes, that would be, Borough would have to do a survey of the project area, and if the area is LMI, 51% LMI, then that project would qualify.
And just FYI, the county is Ray Stolinas with the County Planning Office is talking to the county commissioners at this point about having a Pennsylvania Sustainability Institute study to see about having that.
We're getting into some weeds here. We have
Yeah.
about 5 minutes left.
Okay,
So-
are there any other project
We're
ideas?
convinced now that we may qualify with the sidewalk.
Yeah.
That was what I was,
That would be a big project.
That would be-
Our total funds is 117, is that right?
Yes, now you could do multi-year,
Minus
so-
18%.
That would be our monies then probably for that. I mean, you're talking that whole stretch from the top of the courthouse out to whatever that next road is,
Not
right?
to Wilson, because right now, Wilson's on High Street, where they've replaced the gas line, is all getting new sidewalks. So that's no cost at all to Bellefonte.
And what do you mean by public services?
Public service, we did a lot of those with COVID as well. It has to either be a new service that has not already been offered, or there has to be a quantifiable increase. So if you, in an elderly housing or Section 8 housing where there's LMI residents, if you wanted to bring in a fitness instructor, or you wanted to bring in someone to talk to them about their finances, like an accountant to come explain to them how to invest. Those are public services. Vehicle repair program, which Dawn's going to talk about later for the COVID funds, that's a public service. The rent mortgage utility program, that would be a public service as well. Generally, CDBG funds are not used for public services until COVID. DCD never allowed them. So, because again, they have to be a new service, or they have to have a quantifiable increase, and
Because our solid waste facilities are outside of this LMI, they would not qualify, correct?
correct.
Okay. What do you mean by clearance?
What do I mean by what?
Clearance,
Clearance?
that's what it says, clearance,
Where's that at? I'm sorry.
under eligible activity.
It's probably demolition is what they mean by that, like clearing out. Shamokin does a lot of demolition projects. So you have a condemned building, a condemned house, and you can use CDBG funds to tear that blighted property out.
Okay, and what does disposition mean?
Disposition is, again, like you don't want to displace anyone. So I'm not exactly sure what context they mean by disposition, but. If you're going to displace someone, which the county has said they will not displace anyone, so if they're going to, then they can use CDBG funds to relocate them, so I'm
And
assuming that's what they mean.
utilities, would that be something like if we have particular residents within the LMI group that don't have, say, access to the internet, we could pay for them to have,
That was a project that was discussed for CV funds, yes. Yeah, you could do a broadband project, if they did not have, well, water and sewer is a utility, gas, you could do a gas line project as well to an LMI home.
might be something to think about.
we only have 117,000.
Yeah,
We're not
but,
gonna rebuild.
but what she said is just dump everything in and we can figure it
Minus
out.
18%.
We have 2 more minutes.
So I think Adam just
I think we've-
ahead if we
I
go.
think we've beat this horse to death.
Okay, then to wrap it up, past CDBG projects that were recently completed with CDBG funding were the Talleyrand Park Pedestrian Bridge Project, projects currently underway, the Rent Mortgage Utility Assistance Project, and soon to be a Vehicle Assistance Project. So at this time, I would like to give everyone the opportunity to comment on any projects under consideration for 2022 funds or that were funded with previous CDBG allocations. Hearing none, the historical environmental impacts are also considered. So at this time, I invite the public to comment on any concerns they may have regarding potential for historical or environmental impacts associated with any projects under consideration for 2022 CDBG funding or any other previously funded CDBG project. And lastly, the 504 review, I would like to give the opportunity for anyone to identify limitations on access to any of the borough's facilities or programs. Hearing none, we can close the hearing at 6:30.
I think your sign-in sheet is back there somewhere,
Okay.
Mitzi.
Dawn, I'll get with you then regarding maps of where the sidewalk projects are
All
and
right.
stuff, so we
Thank you,
can.
Mitzi.
Thank you,
Hey,
Mitzi.
thank you, Mitzi. We're gonna move on, Joanne.
What is our next step as council?
July 20th, so I will work with Dawn to review some of these projects and get some maps to ensure that your projects that you talked about are all eligible and fundable. And then, if you wanna look at that sidewalk project, which is kind of what I'm hearing, I'll work with Dawn. The borough will have to appoint a survey coordinator. We will do the survey training for the volunteers and the coordinator, and then the borough will need to do the survey to ensure the project is eligible and fundable to be selected and for the county to select.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'm gonna call the Bellefonte work session together, 6:31, and we'll move into I'll welcome everybody here to the Bellefonte Borough Council work session. No action or making of motions or approvals is taken during work sessions. We will start with a trivia question from our council member Bernier.
Indiana County is known as the blank capital of the world.
Christmas tree.
Christmas tree capital of the world.
Watch too much TV.
Double check it.
That is correct.
Christmas tree. Christmas tree capital.
Okay. What's the big farm there?
Parsons Street Farm, there's a bunch
We
of
need-
them.
We're gonna move on.
How we call it?
Causing
I
controversy.
think it's Sharma, I believe it is. Sharma Young, I believe. She's on.
Oh, she's on there, okay. Sharma, are you ready?
Sharima.
Or Sharima?
Hello, I think you're muted, Sharima.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I wasn't sure if you were going to upload the presentation or if we should.
We're gonna share screens with you. We're thinking that you could run the presentation.
Sure. While I am getting that up and ready, I wanted to introduce my co-presenters, Dr. Saria Chatters, who is a co-chair on the advisory committee on the Task Force on Policing in Communities of Color.
Hello, everybody. Hopefully everyone's having a good afternoon.
Yes.
Okay. And so please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yes, you're good.
Okay, I'm gonna try and go into slide show mode. I'm gonna go off camera because I think that my screen is moving slowly because I'm on camera right now. I'm gonna stop video for a moment here.
There's a little bit of feedback. Dawn, if you maybe turn that one down.
Can you see the full screen or do you see the slideshow version?
See both.
We see the speaker presenter version, but it's okay, Sharina. Can everyone see it there?
Yes.
The large slide?
Yep.
All right, okay.
Okay.
All right. So thank you, everyone, for giving us a few moments tonight to present on the advisory committee for policing communities, policing and communities of color. We're excited to be here tonight to just give you an overview of what we are doing and present what we are hoping to have an opportunity to do. So we wanted to first start out with a little history because the advisory committee actually came out of a task force that actually was instituted between Penn State and surrounding community police departments in 2021. But actually prior to that, there was another task force that had been instituted in 2016, kind of doing the same things. Are you all able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Looking at the basically relationships and impact of policing on communities of color. Back in 2016, that was actually before my tenure on the task force, they did come up with recommendations and a report, but between 2016 and 2021, which was, 2020, excuse me, in which the murder of George Floyd occurred, there were community members that were asking questions regarding that previous task force and what had happened with those recommendations. As we kind of looked at that task force, we realized that actually nothing had happened with those recommendations, and actually not a lot of work had moved forward. So at that point, President Barron, in collaboration with the borough and surrounding townships, instituted a new task force in 2020, and that task force actually was set to actually look at the previous report, basically look at what was currently going on within the environment around policing in communities of color, to see what had changed and actually what recommendations would be made moving forward. And then a report came out in 2021 that was that task force's work. And then in order to ensure that what had happened in 2016 did not occur again in 2021, the advisory committee, which Sharima and I co-chair, was actually put in place. And actually our role is to work toward ensuring that the recommendations that were made from that 2021 report were implemented. And so if you kind of look at the next steps here from the 2021 task force, some of the key areas here was to share the report with local communities, to have discussion and invite feedback. And at the time, the chair of that, of the original task force, which was Dr. Neil Cunningham, did some presentations, I believe here at Bellefonte, in State College Borough, and in some other townships about just what the actual results of the report were. And we're gonna kind of briefly go through those here in our presentation as well. We also wanted to make sure that we were responding to community calls for transparency by presenting the report at local council meetings, and continue to expand the task force's work to support local policing agencies in realizing the success of the recommendations, and then to continue the dialogue. So some of those recommendations that were instituted from the 2021 report, one of the first ones was to hire an external consultant. And the external consultant was really seen as being needed to ensure that we were bringing someone in that had expertise. And one of those primary expertise that we were looking for was working with police departments, working with policing. We know that as we kind of been looking at this and actually working in collaboration with the townships as well as the borough and the chiefs of police, that there is basically a specific set of skills and tools, understanding and knowledge when it comes to working with local policing departments. But also we wanted a consultant that also had that additional piece of understanding and being able to work with communities of color to kind of work to bridge the gap, right, and bring them together. So in hiring that external consultant, some of the primary things that we were looking for them to do as a task force was to really get an idea of what is the perception of police in communities, and that includes all of our communities in all of the townships, as well as to get a better understanding of the working relationship between the local police agencies, to help with case processing, and then to further dig into the racial and ethnic disparity. In the task force actual report that came out, they found that when they were looking at the data that was currently available, looking at arrests and use of force, even in areas or areas of our township that had very, very small populations of Black community members, they found that there was a disparity in that report regarding meeting higher percentages of Black community members were being arrested and or there was use of force. But we know that behind the data, there's always a story, right? So we're wanting to know more about why the data looks the way that it does and look deeper into that. So we were hoping to get an external consultant, or the recommendation was to get an external consultant to be able to look at these racial and ethnic disparities. In addition to that, one of the task force recommendations was to diversify the workforce, diversify those officers that are working in the township departments as well as the borough department as well as university police. And some of those recommendations to do that was cluster hiring. Cluster hiring is when you hire a group of diverse individuals at one time. And how that helps to also retain individuals is because they have a cohort to actually go through, for example, police training, go through that process together, and then come into the force together. Additionally, because we know that our communities are predominantly white and do not have a large percentage of diverse individuals, it gives those individuals a diverse group of community members who would be in the force with them and basically going through the same experiences together. Another recommendation was to hire a DEI director, and we know that the borough is currently underway in hiring a DEI director for State College Borough, but the up there was a DEI director who can work in collaboration between communities and police departments. And then also, it was found that Penn State Police had a mentoring program that they were actually implementing and using not only for diverse police officers, but white police officers as well. And there was a recommendation to actually institute that in some of the other townships because they found that that helped with retention for police officers to have a mentor to support them as they are kind of matriculating through the force. Another recommendation was data consistency and training. The task force had an opportunity to talk to the different township chiefs to find out what data was actually being collected. And it was found, which that will be no surprise to anyone here, that it was inconsistent from one township to the other. And so one of the recommendations was to have consistent data collection across all policing agencies because it's really hard to compare apples to oranges if we're all not only calculating our data in the same way, meaning looking at arrest data, use of force data, traffic stop data, so on and so forth. It's hard for us to compare and contrast if we're all collecting different things and or even calculating those numbers differently. In addition to that, we're looking for a common data management system, specialized training for officers, especially when it comes to working with individuals who may have mental health concerns, working with marginalized populations, including individuals with disabilities, for example. And then also looking at the crisis intervention team training and ensuring that continuous training is occurring and not necessarily a one and done. And then another recommendation here was community engagement to ensure that the police officers are having more opportunities to interact with the community. So there is a recommendation for police officers to basically provide service hours to local nonprofits. And the officer actually have that ability to be able to choose the nonprofit that they wanted to basically provide service hours for and to be compensated for that time. But the aim in that was for officers to be able to form relationships with community not-for-profits, especially those that are serving marginalized and we'll say specialized populations. So as we kind of looked at all of these things that the advisory committee was put in place, one of the key things there is the advisory committee, our primary aim was to advance the recommendations made by the 2021 task force. And the members include all of the police departments that you see here, as well as we wanted to make sure that we had community representatives on the advisory committee, as well as Penn State students on the committee as well. And one of the first pieces, we actually separated the committee into two subcommittees. And one of the subcommittees was on data collection. And these are some of the key questions that we were asking as we were meeting. And as you notice on the previous slide, it was many different police departments that were represented. So this is, for example, me as the data subcommittee chair here, working with other police chiefs. And some of the questions that we came up with, because as we're kind of doing these subcommittees, I'm asking the chiefs, what are some things that we are looking to do here collectively? And one of the things that we were looking to do is saying, what data are we currently collecting and what is missing? Kind of looking at the report and what the 2021 task force report was asking or recommending that we collect, what was currently being collected, and then what do we still need to collect? And then how do we use the data that is collected to inform practice? So one of the things that some of the chiefs that were present were saying, we're collecting this data, but how do we ensure that we are using this data that we're collecting? How is it helping us to get better, right, at the work that we are doing? And then another one of those pieces is, again, as you heard me say in the previous recommendation, establishing some uniformity. And then one of the key things we wanted to know is if we are looking to collect more data or put uniformity in place, trying to figure out who are the key decision makers when it comes to making these changes. And if you notice here, we have State College and University Park present, as well as Ferguson Township. These are some of the data points that are currently being collected. Now, not all of these data points are public. Some of them, for example, for the State College Borough Police, they say they present, for example, in a meeting that they provide an update to the State College Borough Council, but it's not necessarily sitting on a page where the data is always visible and present. For example, employment demographics for State College Borough Police, they were saying that there are some concerns there, because especially with some of the really, really low numbers of police officers of color, if they, like, for example, were to put one black officer, that officer now is identified, right? So they want to be careful that they are not identifying the individuals that are in the force by putting that information out there. And University Police had that same concern as well. Ferguson Township also indicated some of the things that they were collecting and already have up and available, and that was use of force data as well as arrest data and traffic stop data. Ferguson Township said they were not yet collecting employment demographic data, but also were interested in looking into ensuring that they were also, let's say, coming in line with what State College Borough and University Park were already collecting.
Okay, I will take it over from here. So as Saria mentioned, one of the recommendations was to hire a consultant, and we wanted that consultant to take a look at several of the recommendations from the 2021 Task Force report. And we know that at least the borough and Ferguson Township and Bellefonte and Spring may do this too, provide surveys to their residents overall about how they feel the township is doing in a number of different services, policing being one of them. But what we did not capture specifically was how communities of color feel about policing in our region. So what we wanted a consultant to do a deeper dive in is to really look at how the communities of color's perceptions are about policing in our region. So here are some of the things that we listed in a scope of work in an RFP that we plan to send out to several different potential consultants. And one was to disseminate a survey and conduct a quantitative analysis to assess these perceptions of minoritized communities in our region. Secondly, we really wanted to get a qualitative data perspective by having a consultant conduct focus groups and gather the perceptions of minoritized communities in our region. And then thirdly, we wanted them to identify any additional research techniques and strategies that would contribute to the most accurate assessment of communities of color in our region. The second thing that we decided to look at in the scope of work was assessing the working relationship between local police agencies and University Park Police during large events that attract non-white attendees. So we know that we have the football events and other events where we may get a larger population of communities of color that come into the area. So we wanted the consultant to conduct interviews with the participating police departments to examine the working relationships between the agencies to see how they really conduct these large-scale events, to ensure that there's no implicit bias that's taking place, and to request any necessary data to assist in this analysis. Also, we wanted them to identify any potential research techniques and strategies that can contribute to the most accurate assessment as well. So really, because that is more of an influx for us of minorities in our community, we want to make sure that we're not policing differently when those events occur. Also, case processing and cluster hiring and recruitment that Saria mentioned earlier. So we felt like we wanted to really take a look at how are our agencies really going through the process system of those who are being processed in the system. So how are minorities being processed through the system? Are they at a disadvantage when they are being processed? We want them to investigate and identify best practices for recruiting and maintaining minorities for careers in law enforcement in the Center region. We know that that's an issue across the United States. It's been hard to recruit just in general for the field of policing. So what we thought about was how can we get and attract people to this area? It's really going to take a more regional approach. So cluster hiring was mentioned. So we want the consultant to really assess how the regional police agencies can take advantage of a cluster hiring for minorities in law enforcement. So maybe there's some things that we can work at together to get more minorities in the field. We also want them to examine and create and disseminate a cultural assessment tool for each participating police agency to analyze whether their culture is conducive for future minority employees. So you may be recruiting them, but do you have the atmosphere to really retain them? First, attract them, but then also to retain them. And then also we wanted the consultant to look at our data collection and identify tools and resources for consistent data collection across various policing agencies. That data should include demographic information on the use of force in traffic stops, because I don't believe that we have that right now. We also want them to assist the local police agencies in defining standard information that includes various data points such as race, ethnicity, gender, and age. So we want to be able to capture this information so that we can make sure that there isn't any implicit bias or unfair treatment going on when it comes to police practices. So I want to talk a little bit about what we're looking for in some of these external consultants. So we talked with our criminal justice department here at Penn State, and we got a lot of feedback as to the qualifications needed to do this type of work. We also got recommendations from them as to where to look for these experts in the field. So of course, we want them to have a PhD in a background such as criminal justice, criminal law, etc. 10 years of research experience and statistical analysis. That's going to be important to this work. That's the primary function and the scope of work here. Also, 10 years of experience in survey analysis and focus groups, research and publications, and really just being known as an expert in the field, right? That's really what we're looking for, that they're engaged in the field of policing, but also policing as it pertains to communities of color. So that's important. Some of the prospective consultants that we're looking at range from various universities who have criminal justice departments and criminology departments. But we're also looking at police research organizations and professional law enforcement organizations. So some of these individuals have law enforcement backgrounds, but also have the research background to be able to do the work that we need to be done. So before we start with any questions, I just wanted to let you know that we do have this RFP already written in draft form, and we're making this presentation tonight to get feedback and to see if there are any components that you feel like we need to incorporate in this RFP that would help your agency in this work that we're doing. We're hoping to be able to capture the thoughts and just the perceptions of minorities in our whole region. So we want this consultant to really look at the Center region, Bellefonte, of course, and Spring included, to be able to determine, are we consistent across the board with our police practices? Can we do better in certain areas? And how can we improve perceptions and our data collection processes? So I'll stop right there and see if we have any questions.
Do you have any questions? Joanne?
Yeah. I have another hat, and so I've heard a lot of this before. What the question I have is this the group that the committee, is that made up, that the president of Penn State University made up, that includes a representative from the State College Borough?
Yes, it is. And so we initially started it with State College Borough and University Park Police. And so it was initially in 2016, a committee made up of those two entities as well as some community members. The second iteration, which was started in 2020, incorporated other jurisdictions such as Bellefonte and Spring. We wanted to expand it because we know that people don't distinguish between, whose police jurisdiction is who when they're being policed, right? When they're receiving some of these services. So we covered the region.
Okay, so let me follow that up with, as I understand it, that current committee has a representative from the council on State College Borough as well as someone from the police force. We have Sean Weaver here on that committee representing Bellefonte Borough. As I understand it, there is no other community within this region that has council representation to have a public input beyond the police. Is that correct?
We do have some representation from State College Borough. So we have Jesse Barlow, who is on the committee. I think he just handed it over to Divine Lipscomb. So we do have representation there. One of the things that we are concerned about is we have the police chiefs on the committee, but we know that they're not the policymakers, right? They're not the ones that can provide the final say. And so our concern sometimes when we're having the dialogue as a committee is that we're not going to get the buy-in that we need from the townships until we have the sign-off from the township managers and the ward council.
That's exactly where I'm going. So what I'm asking, is there the possibility of having, say, Bellefonte Borough appointing a member of council to this committee, Ferguson Township, Patton Township, all of the other ones, so that we have not only the police input, but we also have the policy-making input?
That is something that I know Saria and I would love. We do have to run it by our co-sponsors, which are Sarah Thorndike and Tom Fontaine. So I will definitely put that forth, Joanne, because that is something that we really would love to have.
I've been hoping for this for a while, so I hope that happens.
And you're speaking our language, so I wish we could say yes, but we have to take it.
Other questions? Well, please feel free. Oh, go ahead.
No, as I was going to say, I don't think there is any more questions. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any other questions. We will get back to you on what our co-sponsors say about having representation from the townships. And we look forward to sharing the updates and you being a part, continuing to be a part of this process.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on now to our next item. This would be shortening the length of parking areas in the 200 block of North Spring Street. Specific request was for 247 to 261 half-block section of North Spring Street where the duplex houses are located. This is the best time of year to get this started, and so we added it to the work session. We are also going to add this into the business meeting once we get into that, because somehow we missed getting that on the new business.
Yes.
So we'll add that for that reason.
We knowing this was on the agenda, came off our goals list. We talked with Matt Allman, the Public Works Director, and we have
Speak up a little bit.
I'm sorry.
Speak up.
We have shortened spaces. I have a microphone right here to pick me up. But anyway, we have shortened spaces over on, I believe it was South Thomas Street a couple years ago. We went from 23 feet to 21 feet. What has to be taken into consideration is the distance, the sight distance at an intersection. It's a minimum of 20 and sometimes longer to make sure people can see getting out of intersections. So we have to do it on a case-by-case basis. If you start to shorten a space, can you gain a space? We may not, because of the sight distance at the next intersection, a hydrant that needs to be spaced. You can't park beside a hydrant, maybe a hidden driveway. Those types of obstacles get in the way of when you start to space out spaces. So in theory, we can look at changing the spaces, but it may not be practical at the end on this particular block.
Is the intent here to increase the number of spaces?
I believe
available?
so.
Gotta speak loud. We have people out in the back that can't hear us. We can hear us, but back that way you can't. So you just need to speak up a little bit more. Everybody needs to do that.
I had the same question. Was the intent of this to gain parking spaces?
Typically, that is the
I can answer,
purpose.
I can answer that because I was the one who talked to the resident. He is an employee of PennDOT. He lives in that block. There is like 4 duplex houses in that thing. There's only like 6 parking spaces in front of those 4. There are not enough spaces for each of the residents to literally park there. And he says it's a real problem in getting, to be able to park near your house. And they're having to go further away. So if we could reduce the length, he estimates from his experience with PennDOT that we could get up to 2 more spaces in that area. I don't know if that's true or not, based on what you said.
Yes.
But that's what he told
You
me.
went from 23 to 21. If you said 6 spaces, even if we said 7, that's 14 feet. That doesn't get you an extra space. You keep in mind, there's a business there, Wetzler's Funeral Home.
No, that's
You're talking
that's
on
further
either-
up the block.
Okay,
That's
well,
much further up the
Just,
block.
I wasn't sure exactly,
No,
but
this block is, when you come out of this building, go to the corner,
yes,
turn right. It's those 4 buildings on the right
okay.
before you get to the single-family dwellings.
All right, well, there's a lane that comes back in
Right.
between the duplexes. That has to have sight visibility. And, if there should be a hydrant in the area, that cannot be blocked, just to give you some examples. So you need quite a few feet of savings to add up to another parking space. Half a space doesn't do it. You're talking quite a bit of space that you'd have to chop off a number of spaces to add up for a new
But I
space.
think if we can provide them, we can shorten them so they can even get 1, 2 would be great, but like you said, the study needs to be done.
Well,
but-
let's let the staff do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Let-
But I think what we
know
need
what
to
we need
do
to
when we
do.
get
Let's do
into
it. Let's see
the
what we can
council
do.
meeting,
Sure.
is to have a motion to say that this study needs to be done relatively quickly so that we can determine how many additional spaces, if any, can be held to help out these residents.
Well, I would just add to that, we can just say if there's enough space, we'll add a space. That can be done.
Yeah.
As you say, we're in the process of painting lines
Yes.
right in this season,
Yep.
so
Do
we
we
can
have-
easily do it that
Do we
way.
even have to have a motion? Can't that just be done administratively? I mean,
I was thinking, but, we
Okay.
talked about it just to be,
all right.
stay on the same
Yeah, I
page.
mean, we put it on the goals list as a goal. I don't think it was determined how it could be handled, but I'm pretty sure you could let the streets department do what they need
Yeah.
to do.
They've done it
And if
before.
we're
that
able
way.
to add, we add, and if we can't,
Yeah.
we can't. We might have to subtract, who knows?
Totally.
That's known to happen with PennDOT
Well,
sometimes.
near intersections, there are a few
I'd
very,
like to help our constituents out as
visibility.
much as possible. And if this is possible, let's do it.
Well, we would. I'm sure we will.
Well, we'll talk about it during the next meeting when we bring this up again and do what's quicker.
So I should go back to this guy and just tell him that we're looking at it, and we'll let him know at the next meeting?
We can make a decision in the next meeting. We can't make that decision right now. Any other suggestions or questions on the North Spring Street parking? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move to reviewing metered parking fees and hours of enforcement. This was put on the goals list just to do like an annual check. It's been 2 years maybe since we put the new meters in and got people kind of used to them. We do have some complaints coming up in the next meeting that we need to talk about. But again, if there's no interest here, it seems, talking to administration, things are working fine. If we change it now, we could be confusing people more.
I would just add, Mr. President, that, we just spent 2 years in COVID. There's no normalcy yet. We just took out, the 15-minute parking spaces, which was temporary for pickup, food or whatever, medication, whatever. We're hoping to get back to normal, but we really don't know what normal is since these meters and the changes went in. That we went from maybe a 9 to 5 to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. because parking was busy during those hours. We're not back to normal yet. So I would ask you or recommend to hold off any major changes. There were some little tweaks here and there that could be done, but I wouldn't do anything major for a while yet.
Any other discussion on that topic? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move to Wood Street and Cherry Lane, stormwater issues causing problems for people that live in this neighborhood.
I can start. These items both came up. They're two separate, totally different issues. Cherry Lane is a water runoff issue from the Temple Court building owned by Center County government. As you know, it came up, I think, early this year, maybe even in past years. The county committed to meeting with us when the weather was better. We did have that meeting on site with we share a stormwater engineer, Don Franson. We both use the same engineer. And we met him on site and looked at the situation. We have what we think is a solution. It's basically, milling the pavement where the water flows to get it to the other side of the lane and then get it out to Allegheny Street without doing any PennDOT work, any highway occupancy permit work that PennDOT would require. It's kind of a trial. We think based on the engineer's input that it'll work because you don't need much of a millage, which is like an indentation in the pavement to get the water to flow across the lane and then down towards the drain, gets around the turn on Allegheny, around the curbing, and heads towards the storm drain. So the engineer knows what needs to be done. We're working with the engineer to see if we may assist with that, or the county may hire a contractor, what have you. We're willing to do whatever we can to help speed up the process, keep things moving. After we were done with that meeting, we went out to Wood Street, which is if you're familiar with Wood Street, it's like the bottom of a bowl of McAllister Street, a couple other streets in that area. All the water runs down to that lower area, and really the storm drains that are there are inadequate. A lot of the older town doesn't have adequate storm drainage, so we did some rough looking at the grades, and the engineer believes we can put in some storm drains and some piping and get the water away from where it's settling right now, which is more really close to the McAllister Wood Street intersection. We can get that water carried away and hopefully corralled better. We did look at some detention areas. He said right off the top it would be far more expensive going with that type of rain garden detention system than the standard catch basin and piping to handle the water. So we're just going on with what the engineer explained to us. But with that project, the engineer wants to do some survey work, and we offered to assist with that. We're just waiting to hear back about scheduling that survey work, and we'll provide labor to do that and then go from there.
Any questions on? Go ahead.
Just a real quick one. So the Cherry Lane issue, the milling that you're talking about, there have been two different kinds of complaints we've had. We've had one during the warm weather where it's just running everywhere. I can see how the milling would help that. We've also had the complaint about it icing up on that street and people slipping. How is this going to help that?
To clarify, the water originates from the Temple Court building. There's a little pipe that comes out of a wall. The heavy-duty water, maybe a couple years ago, was from a condenser that had a valve or something that was sticking. That's been corrected. So the only water coming off out of this opening is condensation water from an air conditioning unit that normally appears during the summertime when those units are running. That water runs down the building. Now in the spring, when we have freeze and thaw, it can be slippery. That water will be captured. Hopefully we'll track, instead of being laid on the ground and freezing, it'll track this pattern or this indentation in the pavement, and almost like a drain, or like a,
Okay.
trying to think of the right word. But anyway, like a little drain path that gets it to the other side of the lane and takes it down to Allegheny, and then it makes its turn on its own because there's enough gravity or incline to get it down to the next storm drain.
Okay,
We're just going on with what the engineer told us. He thinks that will do it.
okay.
It doesn't take much of an indentation to create a pathway for this water.
Okay. And my second question is on the Wood Street issue.
Yes.
You said that it's an inadequate storm drain, needs draining and piping, or a detention pond.
No, I didn't say or. I said we looked at the idea, or presented the idea of a rain garden detention pond, and his first response was that's going to be much more expensive than the storm drains and the piping of the storm water.
Okay. Do you have any idea how much it's going to cost, and is it in our budget?
No and no. I won't know until he does a survey, tells us what he gave us rough numbers. You need a storm drain over there and some piping. He didn't tell us what size piping and so on. But once he gets there and does this work, he can start to do some calculations, give us a rough estimate.
Is it possible when he does this to also give us an estimate for the rain garden issue as well? Just,
I think he could ballpark a number.
I think that
Yeah.
might be able, just so we know
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, I'm still a little iffy on Cherry Lane, and mainly in the winter, as Joanne brought up.
Yes.
Depending on the depth of that trench that's gonna carry the water away, if that freezes up, then that's not gonna follow that trench, it's gonna come onto the road and back down as it did before, because if you have, like you said, you have melting of snow from the roof.
Yeah.
And that's melting from the bottom.
Yes.
And that's coming from the heat of the building, so you do have, there is water that's pretty consistent through the winter after it snows. If there's
Yeah.
water that comes down that pipe, it's about a 4-inch line, but about 2 inches of water comes out of it, something like that.
I'm going on.
I know, I'm just
A
putting that out
stormwater
there.
engineer with years of experience.
I have experience too, and I can tell you
I
that.
think too, he was
Yes.
trying to give us an option that wasn't going to cost a lot of money first. He said, let's give this a try.
Yeah.
If this doesn't work, then we go to Plan B
Yeah.
and probably have to dig.
Yeah, I mean, he thought that this little trench would do it, but if it doesn't, the county and if they're all committed to fixing the problem.
So what did they test it with?
He had a 4-foot-long level and looked at the angles of the road and said, here's where you should put this trench. That's what he
Did they
did.
run water down the line?
No,
Then I don't know how they can,
I'm going
I'm
on
just
his
saying.
experience. This is what this guy does.
I know, but adding water to it would show you what happens when it comes out onto that street.
He used a level.
It has water in it.
Yes.
But that specific problem, which we all agree is a problem, that specific problem was presented to an engineer in the business
Yes.
with decades of experience.
Yes.
And that was his suggestion at this
Yes.
point.
And we're not
Let's
sure.
move on. Sounds good. It's on
Give it a shot.
Yes, there was water in the level. Let's move on.
It'll be up, like, it'll move all the way across the road, Randy, and down along the,
I
where,
know,
what's the building
I
there?
understand the
House-
concept.
what's it,
I know.
The House Fox building.
I know. Okay, that was our last item for the work session, so we're going to take a break. Good evening. I'll call tonight's meeting of the Bellefonte Borough Council to order. Just do a little housekeeping here that council chambers is open to the public with normal or standard occupancy levels. Face covering masks are optional. If you need a mask, we do have them up front, I believe. They're still there. We do have some live feed recording of the work session and meetings. Borough Council meetings can be viewed live on YouTube. It has YouTube. I don't know all the numbers there right now, but you can go to YouTube and find that recording. Same thing with the main meeting tonight. You can also attend virtually through Zoom, and that you can write into the administration and request that feed so that you can join that meeting if you want to join this meeting virtually. Okay, moving on, we'll start with a Pledge of Allegiance and then a private moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Mr. Bernier? Here. Mr. Brackville?
Here.
Ms. Cleaton? Here. Ms. Dan?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Present.
Ms. McKean?
Here.
Ms. Purnell?
Here.
Ms. Sedgwick?
Here.
Ms. Tosti Vasey? And Mayor Johnson?
Here.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to additions to council meeting agenda. In accordance with Act 65 of 21, if the matter is not on the agenda, council cannot take official action on it without some exceptions. Council can act on matters related to potential and early emergencies. Council may add a matter of agency business to its agenda through the majority vote. Council should state the reason why the action item is being added to the agenda. Or do we have any additions?
I would like to add an item that was talked about in the work session this evening. It's changing parking space lines if possible, if there's enough space created or the space to add another parking space. This will be on the 200 block of North Spring Street. We just did not list it as an action item for the business meeting, so we're asking to do that by majority vote.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor to move this to our main agenda this evening, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, so we'll move the North Spring Street to the end of new business.
That was Joanne, Tosti Vasey, and Barb Dan, second.
Any other additions? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment regarding items on this agenda. So if you have an item that's not on the agenda, you'll have to wait till the end of the meeting, and we'll get to those. So this is just regarding items on the agenda. Are there any comments, public comments? Just give us your name and address.
Claudia Wilson, 256 North Wilson Street in Bellefonte. I just want to say that I am a longtime beekeeper, and I have 2 hives at my house. I initially called because I wanted just special dispensation for myself so that I wouldn't have to mow my lawn, because I don't do any treatment on my lawn. I get lots of wildflowers. Violets, all kinds of wildflowers. And just at the same time that I called, there was a thing on NPR on Living on Earth about No Mow May, which then I did send information to everybody. I think you might have gotten that and been able to read about it. With the idea of not mowing your lawn during the month of May, because that's when the insects come out and that's when the wildflowers and just different weeds become available, and important time during the year for other insects other than just bees to make use of those plants. And then, right on the heels of that, came State College Borough, also, I don't know what, taking up that idea of a no mow May and approving it through their borough council. And so I would like to suggest, or ask that that Bellefonte Borough Council consider that it's a little late for this year, although I did it in my lawn, and I have pictures. I just maybe send these pictures around. You can see some of the wildflowers that have come up. I just mowed it a little bit recently so that it's still within the 6-inch limits. But I got so many wildflowers, and I just think that it's a wonderful idea. Also cuts down on gas emissions and cutting lawns when there could be a good benefit to allowing people to let their lawns go. So I'm asking that the Borough Council consider that for a project for next year, I think. Also, I think that I did include what State College did was they made available signs that people could put in their yards to notify, I guess, the borough and also their neighbors to say, this is why my lawn looks like it does. And I think it's a great idea. I think it has a lot of benefit, and I'd like you to consider that.
Thank you. Any other comments on items on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to communications. Mr. Stewart?
And the first one is in regard to Ms. Wilson's comments, the no mow May information that you receive in your agenda materials. It does speak to the State College resolution or whatever they did to suspend their ordinance, but it's there for your consideration.
And that information, we have quite a list in the packet.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to rescind the grass height informant for the rest of this May and consider it again for next year. And then I want to speak on it after we have a second.
Do we have a second?
I'll second Sedgwick.
Okay. We were the first community in Pennsylvania to be certified as a bee-friendly community. By giving the bees and other pollinators a chance to collect the nectar from the grassy areas, we will be assisting our pollinators' survival and doing the next step in maintaining our bee-friendly community and the environment. I think this is a great idea. It doesn't cost us anything, and it helps keep the bees. We have an issue with the bee collapse. By allowing a no mow May, we allow us to have a chance to have the bees come back and do what they need to do for our environment.
Any other discussion?
How has that changed from 30 years ago?
Over the last 5 years, I may be wrong on the timing, there has been a very large surge in what's called bee collapse, where in some parts of the country, 95% of the bees and other pollinators have disappeared. One of the reasons is that we have cut down a lot of what they eat off of, which is the flowers that Claudia talked about. And by scouring them during this 1 month when they need it the most, we will be able to help them come back.
Okay, there's a big infestation of ticks lately, and they harbor themselves in grass that's 6 to 10 inches high. And then most of the time they're found anywhere. So how will we control those? I mean, if you have kids playing in the yard or nearby, and if you cut your grass short, that prevents the infestation of ticks. Yes, it does. Yeah, it does. So it's an option, right? You either can or you can't cut your grass.
This would be a voluntary
Yeah,
thing.
okay.
This is not saying that everybody has to do this. This is a voluntary thing, that if someone decides not to cut the grass for the month of May, they don't get fined for not having cut their grass.
And I have a possum, there are a lot of possums around Bellefonte, and they eat the ticks.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I said I have a possum at my house, there are a lot of them in Bellefonte, and they
A
eat the
possum?
ticks. Yes. They eat like 5,000 ticks a year.
They what?
They eat 5,000 ticks each year.
Well, let's put them out there and have meetings. We have a big
Instead of those
infestation of
trees, you
them.
gotta go, give us a couple of possums.
Ask anybody who's had a tick on them and had to have it removed,
Okay.
get that possum at their house.
Any other discussions on this? All those in favor of the motion to no mowing the remainder of May of this year and into May 2023, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Post same sign. Motion carries.
Next item is a complaint about the parking meters in the downtown, really a request to remove them. It's for your consideration.
I'm just want to throw this out there because when I was reading this one, it talks about a $10 fee. And I'm not quite sure where that's coming from. It's
I think that's a park, if you get
That's
a
a
parking.
fine.
if you
That's
get
the
a parking
fine?
ticket.
Okay. But then we have another letter coming up
Yes.
after this, so go ahead with that, and I'll just address it.
Okay, the next one is similar. A person went into the drugstore, was upset that the 15-minute parking meter pickup program had ended, and was complaining that, the minimum was $1 for the meter. Just for what it's worth, that's not correct. You can use coins in the meter up to $1 or beyond $1, but they do take coins. 25 cents for 15 minutes is the minimum, and you can go up from there. But there was a complaint about the loss of the 15-minute meters and some other general complaints about the borough.
And those are the points I was going to bring up as far as the pricing. Maybe I just misread what the meter was telling us. $1 to park there for an hour, but you can park there for 15 minutes.
Yeah, if you use a credit card, the minimum charge is $1. All the meters take coins.
Quarters.
Are the
Quarters,
meters
yes.
in the parking lots?
No,
They're different. That was
that's a
a-
kiosk, a central
Yeah.
kiosk. She was,
And that was a minimum of $1.
Yes.
When I tried to use, when I
Yes,
That is
they
correct.
do not take coins. It's
Yes.
card only in the municipal lots.
yeah, we were speaking about all the meters on the
Okay, so
streets.
the meters run a
Yes.
different,
Yes, they're two
Then the
different
lots.
systems.
Okay. Next item is the Bellefonte Middle School lacrosse team banquet request to have rental fees waived for the pavilion at number 3 at Governor's Park on May 31st, 2022. The current rental fee is for electric pavilion is $50. I'll call for a motion to approve the waiver of rental fee for pavilion number 3 on May 31st, 2022 for the Bellefonte Middle School lacrosse team banquet at Governor's Park. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Deb?
Clayton,
I'll second.
Sean
McKean.
McKean, second. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can we do this one?
Church of Good Shepherds wants to do a vacation Bible school Saturday, July 23rd. They want to block off Valentine Hill Road.
Yeah, I'll call for a motion to,
I'm sorry.
oh, yeah, wait, where am I at? Yeah.
9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. is what the times are.
Sorry, I thought you were done.
The road would be closed.
So I'll call for a motion to, and a second, to approve the road closure of Valentine Hill Road on Saturday, July 23rd, 2022, from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. for the Vacation Bible School event.
I make that motion.
Motion by Mark Dan. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joanne Stacy. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve the road closure for Valentine Hill Road on Saturday, July 23rd, 2022 at 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. for the Vacation Bible School event signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, same sign. The motion is approved.
Next one is just a concern with the Bellefonte Plaza Theater. Recommendation from the writer of the letter to invest in that building, restore the building back to a theater.
It's a difficult request to do when you don't own the building.
Yes.
My only thought on this was exactly what you said, Randy. This is a privately owned building. We can't take any action on it. But should it become available or concerned at a later time, I think that we should probably get the Bellefonte Historic Preservation Foundation, Beta, and BHCA involved, because I think there are funds available to assist with that building. But right now, I don't think there's any action that we can take.
No. Thank you. Moving on, 2022 household hazardous waste collection results. There'll be a press release. There's no action also to take with this. I don't have any dates, and I don't think I.
No, it was really more or less a summary of the program that was very successful in collecting a lot of, I guess, hazardous chemicals, getting them out of homes and properties. And they just are going to be doing it again next year. So it's just a summary of this past event.
Bellefonte Bandit Senior Legion baseball team is requesting to use Governor's Park baseball field in June, July, and August of 2022. We'll call for a motion and a second to approve the Bellefonte Bandits' use of the baseball field at Governor's Park for the months of June, July, and August of 22. And with that, they also provided a letter that hopefully council had a chance to look at, and they're willing to work with the school district or anybody else that uses that field and hopefully be able to coordinate their games together. They also provided a certificate of liability insurance, and Bellefonte is covered under that.
I read that liability thing. It just says, it doesn't say Bellefonte Borough.
No, we'll have to, I read that too today. We'll have to circle back and have them list Bellefonte Borough as additional insured.
It's right at the bottom left.
It says a certificate holder, but it doesn't, we're not listed as,
Okay.
in this
Up here.
area,
I got
as
you.
an insured,
Right.
so.
Why are they, is this provider somebody, why wouldn't they go local with somebody? It's somewhere, Kansas or somewhere, the agency? I can't remember it. I don't have it in front of me.
It's in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Are you talking about the insurance agent?
The insurance policy is out of state.
That could be a broker,
Yeah,
whoever
okay.
provides, yeah.
Well, I didn't see Bellefonte Borough.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So do we want to
You can condition it.
include, yeah, make that a conditional improvement based
Yes.
on
I think
Bellefonte
so.
being named? Okay.
Who's making the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Conditionally.
Second.
Bernier and Johnson.
Here. It's conditional on Bellefonte being properly named on the insurance.
I will probably vote against it if we go for a full thing, because I don't think there's enough information in this request to grant the approval today. I think if they come back with additional information, I think we can. For example, what days of the week are they talking about? What times are being requested? Is this for practice as well as tournaments? And he does say, and I agree with him, that they said he's willing to coordinate with others using the ball field. I just want to make sure that he understands that it's a first reserve, first on base, pun intended.
Well, I took his phone call when he initially called, and he understands all that. This fella's done it before, so.
Okay, but we don't have any times or anything
Well,
else?
They do it 5, they do it any day they can get on it. I mean, they may practice every day and play games, so.
The other, I understand exactly what you're saying. I agree with you. And I understand Joanne's concerns, but you're right, we've done this years in past. The only addition I have to the comment is the pavilion, if it's reserved by a resident, is for their use. So I don't want somebody who's reserved the pavilion to go out there and there's a ball tournament going on and they're overrun by the fans that are there taking over the reserved pavilion. So as long as he's aware of that,
Yeah, I don't see that.
I'm fine.
But they hang around the pavilion up on top by the field.
Okay, but there's no request for a pavilion in this.
I know that,
Okay,
but what
all right,
happens
all right.
is
They
when the
hang up.
tournaments occur,
Yes, that's where they go.
they take over the pavilion, even if it's reserved, or they have in the past, even though it's reserved for a Bellefonte resident. So I just want to, I guess we post that it's reserved, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, but people don't know, we've had a problem before. So just make him aware of that our residents who reserve it have priority.
Are you asking for an additional notification to him of that?
We'll just add it to the letter. I
We
mean,
can do it that
Yeah,
way.
because
That's fine.
it'll be part of the approval.
Yes.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, then we'll call for a motion and second.
Well, I do want to,
Okay.
do we get any money out of this when they have ball tournaments? I mean, they charge a fee for tournaments to the other teams that come into the tournament play. Where does that money go?
it would come here into the parks budget,
Okay.
but to be honest, Doug, I think the Legion baseball is a league, a local league. This
Within the
isn't more
Bellefonte.
tournaments related,
Okay.
it's just
This
Okay.
is a nonprofit.
All right,
within
well,
the-
we have had tournaments in the past out there, and we've
Yes.
not seen any profits
No,
from
we've,
those.
have a fee for using the field.
Okay. I'm good.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion and second to approve the Bellefonte ban its use of the baseball field at Governor's Park for the months of June, July, August
Do you have
of
that?
2022, and be a conditional approval to get more information about the times, dates, posting the pavilions, and was there anything else on that? I think that
the
covered it.
Liability.
Oh, the insurance, and yeah, added Bellefonte to the insurance. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Next one, I'm sorry. Next letter is in regard to the short-term rental ban ordinance. I know that's being considered by council. It's there for your consideration as far as the letter.
I do have a comment, question basically on the ordinance, and I did read this last letter too. But we now have the ad hoc committee for the ordinance. But have we made a decision on what we want the ordinance to be?
No, we're still in the process. We have a meeting with the STR owners this week on Thursday.
Okay.
And we did meet with residents last week, and so we're just halfway through our process of
Okay, so,
meeting
so
with
we're,
people.
we're still deciding what we want to do, is that correct then?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
So at this point, I think what the action should probably be is leaving the committee to do their work.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I just wasn't sure where we were going with that. Thank you.
Any other questions on that item? Okay, seeing none, placement of St. John Field Crossing down by the,
They're asking it be closer to the actual crosswalk, where it is, cars it's a tight squeeze around the sign. I would just ask that, there is PennDOT's regulations, Mr. Weaver is back there, but there's PennDOT regulations on how close they can be. So I'd want to make that a conditional, if the regulations allow, we can move it closer. I do realize there's some closer in town, but want to be within the margin of the regulations.
Can this just be handled administratively?
Yes.
Let's do that.
So- Just a curiosity question. I think this is more of a police safety issue than administrative, so I think maybe having Buddy direct Sean to handle this.
Our public works people set out the signs.
Oh, okay.
These little plastic signs are set in the right of way.
Oh, okay.
That's what we're talking about. So
Oh,
it's
okay. I thought
something-
this was something,
No.
is this, so we set them out and St. John's doesn't set them out?
That's correct. We set
Okay.
them out
Okay.
this time of year till about the late fall, then we take them out because of winter snow plowing.
Okay.
We put them out, our Public Works Department puts
Okay.
them out.
Okay,
That's good to know, because I was confused on that. I thought we were talking about a yield sign that was along the street.
that's
No,
what I
it's-
was thinking too.
It's yield to pedestrian signs.
Okay.
'Cause-
The little sandwich boards.
Yes, kind of with a rubber boot on the bottom.
Okay.
Okay, the next item is parking spot in front of the Bellefonte Walk. Council can consider action on this item or add it to the goals list, and I think that might be the best thing to do right now, is go to the goals list. 'Cause
So,
we-
may I add a little bit of a, because I actually talked to him before he sent in this letter, because he talked to me about this. What he was offering to do, which I didn't see in the letter, was that if we were to consider this, he would be willing to pay a full 9 AM to 8 PM cost for that 1 meter, to make it a 15-minute meter for his use or for any of the other businesses in the community. So
He did
that-
say that in the letter. It was in the letter that he would
He would
work with the
compensate.
borough if they would consider that.
I think it is a work session item, because if you do it for one, you gotta offer it throughout.
Right,
And
and I
then
told
we're
him
right
that.
back, we might as well left it where it was.
So, but except that he's offering to compensate us for
I
it, which is
understand.
the
Yeah.
difference, yeah.
Okay, so we'll push that forward probably in the next work session. Okay, and also in the communications is a PA Energy newsletter. There's no action required on that. And then the last one is a Hometown Hero Banner Pickup Day is Saturday, May 21st at 2022. And again, no actions required, but the time is, I believe, from 9 to 4 or something like that.
Yeah. makes sense.
Okay. Then moving on to the consent agenda, we have no minutes for the last meeting. Did they come in at all yet, Dawn? Didn't see them? Okay, just wondered. I don't want to get too far behind, because we were like 3 meetings behind there for a long time. So actually what we have
Could
under
I ask a
consent.
real quick question? Do we have have we sent out advertisements for replacement?
Yes.
Okay, do we have any?
We have a person that's giving us a sample set. I don't think they're with us this evening.
It's because we didn't get
We didn't get
what
the
we
ones.
were hoping for is the original, but we did get the person that wants to take over. We got hers as a sample, but I think Alyssa was thinking we wanted to put them in so you could see the comparison and then make, some
Okay.
comments.
So what we could do, since we're, Linda's done at the end of May, we'll send out the draft that the other person's doing for you to take a look at. But we
Okay,
gotta make a decision here pretty soon.
okay,
That'd be
thank you.
Yes.
So on the consent agenda, I'll ask for a motion in a second to approve the consent agenda with the budget versus actual April 2022, budget versus actual summary April 2022, treasurer's report of April 2022, and the voucher summary of April 2022. Do I have that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Deb Clayton, motion. Do I have a second?
A second, Dan.
Second, Barb Dan. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda with the budget versus actual summary, treasurer's report, and voucher summary report for April 2022, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And this takes us into reports, and Mr. Mayor, you have some work to do.
Yes, proclamation. EMS Week proclamation to designate the week of May 15th through the 21st, 2022 as Emergency Medical Services Week. Whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, and whereas the members of emergency medical service teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. And whereas emergency medical services has grown to fill a gap by providing important out-of-hospital care, including preventative medicine, follow-up care, and access to the telemedicine. And whereas the emergency medical service system consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency medical dispatchers, firefighters, police officers, educators, administrators, pre-hospital nurses, emergency physicians, trained members of the public, and other out-of-hospital medical care providers. And whereas the members of emergency medical service teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours, specialized training, and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and accomplishments of emergency medical service providers by designating Emergency Medical Service Week. Now, therefore, I, Buddy Johnson, Mayor of Borough of Bellefonte, Pennsylvania, in recognition of this event, do hereby proclaim that the week of May 15th through the 21st, 2022 as Emergency Medical Services Week. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the mayor? I see there's also a report here on parking enforcement and animal control. Nothing new on that?
No, one thing I would just like to point out in Chief Weaver's report, both daylight and night shifts continue to perform foot patrols in the parks downtown and at special events, primarily weekend day shifts and early evenings for night shift foot patrol. That's something that we heard council say in my meetings with all the police officers. We discussed how important foot patrol is, and I know Chief Weaver has been very integral in having his officers go out on foot. I've had numerous comments from community members saying how they see the police officers on foot and how it's nice to see them around town and speak with them. And so thanks, Chief. That's been a real asset. Thank you.
Okay, following up on that, we have the police report. Chief, you want to come up? Anybody have any questions for Chief Weaver? I see a hand up already.
I knew that.
I was going to ask.
Yes, sir.
Last month, I asked what the blank line at the top, total offenses, was referring to. I looked at the report today, and it is also blank. For April, the number shown is 13, which seems to be included in the total at the bottom. I counted 40, your number said 41, so that would include the 13 in this line. But we still don't know what it is, and so I went back to April and looked, and there's 13 of something, but what?
Okay, you're on the last page.
Yes,
Total offenses.
yes, and the very first line is totally blank, and then it has 13. But nothing says what it is.
Show me.
Pull up what came out.
Here, I'll bring.
Are they just out of line?
They might be out of line. Mine has.
Here's, is this what you're looking for?
Keep going down, 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 down. No, it's not that one.
Right there?
No, that's not what showed up on
Here?
mine.
This one?
Let me show you what I see. Hold on a second.
I have a question. You have
Well, we're
100
answer his question, then I'll come back.
you have 145 parking tickets issued. How many have you collected? That's a real easy one.
Should be on the parking,
On the,
should be on the parking, I don't,
yeah, it's on the, it says, Sean, or Chief, it says 145 are written, but it doesn't say how many.
is that on the parking report or mine?
Yeah, no, on the parking report.
Okay, I have no idea.
Okay.
There's-
We asked-
There are citations,
It says total parking tickets issued, 145, and I'm interested in knowing how many were collected.
okay.
And I think we talked about that before.
There should be a line there on how many
Right.
citations were issued. So if there are citations issued, they're
Would
the
that-
ones that aren't collected.
Would the citations be under your report or the parking?
They should be under the parking report.
Let me see. Abandoned vehicle, parking, NA, animal 3 supplement,
Down the very bottom.
traffic. Well, this I see was issued, but how many were paid?
Oh, I see what you're asking, okay.
Well, if that's in April, they have how many days of report, or how many days of, they might not have them all in. Like, if it was written in
Okay.
at the end of April, they have until May to,
10
May
days.
10 days.
10 days.
So we wouldn't have all that information right
Okay.
now. But what I can tell you is that citations issued for parking.
Traffic stops, blah, blah, blah.
I'll get with Gabby
Yeah, no
and Scott
problem.
and find out.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
And here's the page that I'm talking about, you can come through. Total offenses, 4/1 to 4/30. This whole first line says 13, and it's exactly the same thing happened last month.
Where? I can't see it. What line you?
This line
Oh,
is
right here?
blank. Above this line, it says
Oh.
access, it says 13. There's nothing associated with 13.
I don't have that.
Well, this is the report that we got, and this is the same thing that happened last month.
Okay. Total offenses and cases, okay.
That's a good way of showing what line item I'm looking.
No, it's not that one, it's further. keep
Well,
going.
it was on before that. But
Yeah.
You have it on the same, I'm on the same page, I
Yes.
believe.
But at the very top, it says access device fraud.
Up here.
Any other questions for Chief
That's all
Weaver?
right. Okay, thank you.
Seeing none.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Chief.
Sorry about that.
At this time, I'll call on our zoning officer to come forward. Do you want to do these separately?
Sure, we can do, yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll do them separately. So, as was in your memo, there's no hard meeting. There will be a hard meeting this next Tuesday, the 24th of May. We did have a planning meeting last Monday, and there's three separate projects. Two of them are the waterfront projects. So I would recommend approval of the following projects with the understanding that the applicant's going to work with me to incorporate the county review comments. So the first one is the Conference Jewelers building addition and renovation. That is the preliminary final land development plan.
Can you
Yeah,
explain a
so
little bit what that is?
I'll call for a motion and second for Conference Jewelers building addition and renovation, primary/final land development plan. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Vernier,
I'll second it, Clayton.
second, Deb Clayton. Discussion.
That is, the Conference Jewelry is moving to the old Pizza Hut building out on Zion Road, and they're adding a small addition out to the back of that
Okay.
property and kind of maybe reconfiguring some parking and those sorts of things. Impervious coverage is not changing. They don't need any sort of waterfront, or sorry,
water management plan or anything, and they're working with PennDOT on the appropriate permits needed in regards to anything related to Bishop/Zion. So.
Any other discussion, questions to the motion? Okay, all those in favor of approving Comfort Jewelers building addition and renovation preliminary/final land development plan signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
All right, and then the second project is the final land development plan for the waterfront development project. This particular one is for replots that needed to be done on those 3 parcels in relation to some where the work they were doing with Dunlop Street. So the parcel changes aren't major, but they have to go through land development. So.
Okay, so I'll call for a motion for the waterfront development project final plan for the Bellefonte waterfront replots. Do I have that motion?
I'll make the motion, Johnson.
Mr. Johnson, do I have a second?
I'll second for now.
Second, Rita Purnell. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the waterfront development project final plan Bellefonte waterfront replots signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And then the final project is also the waterfront development project. This is the only change that happened from what was presented to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission was presented with a preliminary land development plan, but at the Planning Commission recommended approval of changing that to a final land development plan because it's complete, and that was asked of the applicant. So this is the plan that you guys were presented with a few weeks ago by Mr. Songer here. It includes the rooftop addition, the height extension, everything. It's the final plan.
So I will call for a motion and a second for the waterfront development project preliminary/final land development plan or the Bellefonte waterfront. Do I have that motion?
I'll make that motion, McKean.
Shauna McKean,
I'll second it, Clayton.
and second by Deb Clayton. Discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of approving the waterfront development project preliminary/final plan, land development plan, Bellefonte waterfront, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Great.
Thank you.
It's just a reminder, these plans have been reviewed by the county planning office, so any comments that the county planning office made, just recommendations for how to tweak and finalize their land development plans before they're officially signed and put onto record. I'll work with the applicants on making those changes that are needed, so.
So I have a simple question.
Yeah.
So after that's approved, do we have all the Ts crossed and Is dotted for Mr. Songer to get shovels in the ground? Does that complete our part of?
Our part is done.
Yeah.
Mr. Songer's here.
Now the hard work begins.
Yeah,
So.
well, I just wanted to make sure we're not preventing you from moving forward, or the
Actually,
county.
it's been a pleasure working with all of you and the community in general on this project. The challenging part is now get that shovel in the ground. And I don't have to tell you, but it's very challenging times with respect to construction costs, material deliveries, whatever. But we're continuing to work very hard on those issues, and we're trying to do our best to get this project started this year. As a matter of fact, I had a very good meeting today with 2 finance people who we've been working with for months on this. But everything is changing, and it's very difficult, but I think we're going to be able to make this happen yet this year. But some of the agencies, for instance, we're dealing with at the state level on the grants and so forth, they have particular requirements. And for instance, the one agency we expect to hear from in July, and if we gain the approval of the grant and low interest loan that we've requested, this only applies to the parking garage. It's really the most challenging part of the development, is doing a parking garage and making it pay for itself, okay? So anyway, we're working with this Building in Our Sites program at the state through Delta Corporation is helping us and has helped us a lot already. And if that comes out positive, then from the time we gain their approval, we got 4 months to start construction. So we're confident we can do that, and we're actually going to take bids on some of the work like the deep foundations and so forth pretty soon here, so that we have those contractors in place that when we get that okay, we're going to start there, okay? So we've hired our construction managers. They're working hard on preparing bid packages and so forth, and we're going to really be our own general contractor on this job. We're going to, the two gentlemen we hired are both very experienced. They know the area, and their job is to get a high-quality project done at the best possible price, and also look for alternative ways to get that job done as efficiently as possible. So anyway, we're working hard on all those aspects, and I don't have to tell you it's a big undertaking, but got a lot of moving pieces here, and it's just this crazy supply system we're in now. And it doesn't, you know what? It doesn't matter who I talk to. Earlier this year, we had done a project, just a simple 9,000 square foot office renovation. We couldn't get insulation. Okay, think of that. You can't get insulation. And I know of several people who were going to build new homes this year who have just put it on hold because the costs are just extraordinarily high as compared to what they were just 2 years ago. But anyway, we appreciate, again, your cooperation on our project, and we're doing our best to, as I say, try to get started here yet this year.
And we thank you for your persistence in keeping it moving.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there were no nuisance codes, as your, Mr. Brooks isn't feeling well, so there's, I think he's done some minimal work, but I couldn't find this OCO memo.
It's,
I just missed it maybe.
His cover memo.
Okay.
I just said that.
All right, that's good.
I did just want to mention quickly that I too did not get the planning commission meeting minutes in time to put into the packet, so otherwise they would be there, but we're having trouble getting minutes, so.
Yep.
As you know, yeah.
Join the club.
Yeah.
Next up is Borough Manager reports. Are there any questions of Mr. Stewart? Seeing none, we'll move on.
Thanks very much.
Yep. We have a memo about the meeting with Gaston and Ralph at the band sale committee. You guys
There's
any questions on that?
Just, you want to go down the
I
list?
can get on through the list,
Okay.
yeah. Go ahead.
So, yeah, if there's any questions, we're happy to answer them.
We have Bellefonte Environmental Advisory Board, Review Board. Report was submitted for that. Next, after that, we have a live report, hot right here in the room. We'll call Cindy Hahn to come up and tell us a little bit about Cnet and what's going on.
Thank you. I'm sure my hair looks really good after the headphones, so I'm trying to straighten it out back here. Thank you very much. My name is Cynthia Hahn, and I'm the Executive Director of Cnet, and it's great to see everybody in person, and we have a lot of new council members this year, so it's particularly exciting. I prepared a report for you to sort of hit some highlights, and I thought I would really fly by this, and then at the chair's pleasure, I can take any questions. Just to start off, the borough's representative to the Cnet Board of Directors is Don Holderman, and he is a wonderful, valuable, inspiring board member. So thank you very much for giving him to us for that assignment. Next, please. Just go on down. Wow, that is small. Okay, so some highlights of 2021. As all of you are aware, of course, 2021 was the year of the hybrid. Every organization had their own different way of coming up with how they were going to do hybrid meetings, but that was what 2021 was all about. And Cnet was really quite instrumental in helping a lot of organizations decide how they were going to do hybrids and help them, if at all possible. We produced 511 programs in 2021, and that's up about 13% from 2020, which probably isn't surprising given 2020. We added Amazon Fire as an offering to our over-the-top viewing options.
What does that mean?
Over the top is what is a word they use for things like Roku. And, you know, it's internet, it's provided by internet, it's not cable. Usually they're streaming sticks or set-top boxes, and they're all sort of referred to as over the top. And so as I'll show you later, we now have 3 of those options: Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. So we added Amazon Fire just last year. And finally, the Board of Directors approved an update to our strategic plan from 2017. Really was not a new plan, just an update. So we did see an increase in the number of programs that we are live streaming on YouTube. So there are currently 12 regular programs that we live stream, and of course the Bellefonte Borough Council meetings are one of those, and you can see there's a sort of a hefty list there of the others. So in terms of specifically Bellefonte Borough programming, the borough had Cnet cover 25 council meetings, work sessions last year, and then the 1 special Diamond Area Safety Improvement public comment meeting, for a total of 26 programs in 2021. Now, if you're not really familiar with the Cnet funding formula or the way that it works, the dues of every organization is determined by your percentage of all of the programs that are sponsored by all of our members. So that's why percentages and number of programs that are sponsored are sort of important. So last year, the borough sponsored just short of 5%, 4.9% of all of our programming by all of the members. The year before, that figure was 4.7%. So pretty stable, not a lot of change from year to year. And this graph shows you the last 5 years, 2017 through 2021. And that is important because our funding formula looks at a 5-year rolling average. So years drop out, years fold in. And what that does for you and for all of our members is, if you should have a really busy year, a lot of contentious items, a lot of special meetings, this happens with the school districts, for example, a lot. It means that your dues are not going to dramatically increase all of a sudden 1 year, because we take that 5-year rolling average. So it's kind of a smoothing technique that serves to stabilize your member dues. So that's the graph that shows you sort of what the last 5 years looks like. Again, really very, very stable. So if you look at that 5-year period of time, the borough sponsored 4.83% of all of our programming. The previous 5 years had been 4.89, hardly any difference at all. And again, that is important, because every year when we do our budget and we look at what your dues will be in the next year's budget, we are looking at that 5-year rolling average. So your 2023 dues will be determined by your sponsorship between 2017 and 2021. And this is a graph of all of our members over the past 5 years. And I have that red arrow pointing down there to Bellefonte Borough. I would say in terms of municipalities, you tend to sponsor less programming than most of our municipalities, but that is one simple reason. Most of our municipalities now have their planning commissions covered as well, so that immediately doubles really the number of programs that they sponsor, and that is primarily why. So just a reminder, where to watch. The meetings are, of course, rebroadcast at the times that you see there on Channel 7, and then live streamed and archived on YouTube. And you know, the direct link that we send you prior to every meeting, that is the direct link to the YouTube live stream. But if someone doesn't have that direct link, as long as you remember CNET's YouTube channel, which is CNET Center County, you can always find the live stream. So it's kind of a thing to tell people if they're looking for it. You don't really have to memorize that direct link. It's Cnet Center County. And I wanted to just, because there are new council members, cnet1.org is our website, and all of our programs are on cnet1.org. They are all indexed by agenda item. So when you go to CNET's website, you will see, and the arrow is pointing there, there's a long list of playlists, and one of those playlists is for Bellefonte Borough Council. You would simply click on that. You will see there the most recent meeting is ready to play. And then down the right-hand side, first you'll find all the agenda links. So if you are only interested in watching the discussion on the short-term rental ordinance, you click right on that agenda item. It takes you right to that point in the meeting. And then below those agenda links are all of the previous meetings that are there for you to watch. And we keep those online for a minimum of 12 months. So as I mentioned earlier, in addition to Channel 7, our own website, cnet1.org, and YouTube, we are available to view on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Now this gives you, just a lot of times people are interested in this, some information about the number of people who are watching you online. So I took the period of January of 21 all the way through the end of March of 22, and on the cnet1.org website, the average number of views per meeting is 121.2. On YouTube, the average number of views per meeting is 64. Now I want you to keep in mind that this is not television viewing at all. The cable companies consider viewing data to be proprietary information. And so I will never be able to tell you how many people watch you on TV. You'll have to assume it is thousands, but that is information that I will simply never be able to give you. I can only give you online data. So just some basics about franchises. If you're having trouble sleeping, franchises will take care of that problem. The reason that channels like CNET exist at all is because of franchise agreements between cable companies and municipalities. Cable companies don't have franchises with the county, they don't have franchises with school districts, they don't have franchises with any other entity but local municipalities. And in those franchises, the municipalities are allowed to negotiate for certain things, and one of those things is having channels like CNET, government and educational channels. So your franchise with Comcast was negotiated. You were one of 8 municipalities known as the Central Area Cable Consortium that negotiated the franchise. So you have an identical franchise to all of those other municipalities, but it is an individual, even though it's identical, with Comcast. Your franchise fees are 5% of whatever the cable company gross revenue is in Bellefonte Borough. So in 2021, that 5% came to a little over $113,000. So that is what the Comcast sends you, that money every year. It's 5% of their gross revenue within Bellefonte Borough. You also then negotiated successfully for a subscriber pass-through in the borough, which means that every cable customer's bill every month has a little tiny fee of about 22 cents per month that they pay, and that money is forwarded directly to CNET and pays for all of our capital purchases. So cameras and microphones and servers and all of that, you do not pay for any of that. That is really completely paid for by that subscriber pass-through. Our member organizations only pay to support our operating costs. And of course, we have in the franchise a provision for an HD channel in the future, and we have continued access to the Comcast digital guide. So when you scroll through the guide, it'll actually tell you Bellefonte Borough Council, and it won't just say something like government programming.
We were fortunate to get that.
Yes.
That was a very hard negotiation.
It's amazing how difficult that was. I do not know of another channel like Cnet in the country that has actual programming on that digital guide. It is something they simply do not do. And they did it for us, and I'm afraid to ask why, but that is true.
We were good hard bargainers.
Very. So just finally, just some tips to keep in mind. There are microphones there in front of you. You do need to avoid leaning back too far from your microphone. Avoid placing papers and other materials onto your microphone. And most importantly, insist that everyone who speaks from the front of the room comes to the podium where the microphone is located to speak. I did place at your seats tonight the 2021 annual report. You'll see lots of pictures of people you know in there. And I think that's the last slide, isn't it, Don? There we go. Good. That completes the report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Cindy? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, great. I'll go back to my assignment.
Okay, the next report was from the Nittany Valley Joint Recreation Authority. If anybody has a question, just stop me as I'm going through these. We had a report submitted from Union Cemetery Association. We had a report submitted from Center County Airport Authority. We had a report from the Center County Library Board and a report from the Work Safety Committee of May 11th. And then I don't see any reports after that. So we do need to, I think, Ralph, I'm not sure what's going on with Water Authority, but we were trying to meet with them. We had one meeting.
Yes, they only meet once a month, and
Correct, yeah.
we're just ran out of time to get
That's fine, I just wondered,
some
because
negotiations.
just want to keep it on the
Yes,
burner there,
yes.
so we're aware of it. Okay, moving on to current and old business. We have the 2023 to 2026 Center County MPO Transportation Improvement Letter of Support for Mill Street and Phoenix Avenue. Letter is due on May 30th, 2022. A draft letter is included. I'll call for a motion and a second to send the letter to the CCMPO.
So moved.
Second. Okay, motion from Joanne, second by Doug. So Doug Johnson, second, Joanne Toasty making the motion. Discussion?
Well done, Ralph. Nice
Thank
letter.
you. Thanks very much.
All those in favor of the motion to, let me read this properly again. Call for the motion to support the Center County MPO Transportation Improvement Letter of Support of Mill Street and Phoenix Avenue. The letter is due on May 30th, 2022. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next item is downtown street examples. They're located down at the YMCA. I put this in my heads up so people get, if we take the chance during the weekend to get down there and take a look at them. So I'll call for a motion and a second to approve the purchase of the clear globes for the street lights downtown.
I'll make the motion, Johnson.
I'll second it, Clayton.
Motion Doug Johnson, second Deb Clayton. Discussion.
I just wanted to clarify, at the last meeting, Councilwoman Toasty Basie asked about the LEDs. They are LED lights, Joanne. They're just a higher wattage LED.
Okay.
I checked with Craig on that.
Okay, thank you. Personally, I prefer the frosted, so I'm wondering why the Public Works is recommending the clear globes.
Kathy and I, my wife and I went down, I think it was Friday evening, and it was dark. And when you stand under the unfrosted light, it lights up the sidewalk. You're basically like you're in a spotlight kind of thing. So you walk over across where the frosted light is, you don't have that light casting down on the sidewalk. So to me, it doesn't help light those crosswalks up, what we were trying to do with the crosswalks. And that light does not have that
Okay.
filtering in it, to
I
me, is a better
drove
light.
through, so I did not do the stop and try it, so.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. You walk in and you're just, it's like an end of day type of thing, 5 o'clock in the
Yes,
evening
sir.
or something like that.
Mr. Johnson and I stopped from the way back from the airport meeting, and we felt the same way. The light, brighter, better lighted light was near the YMCA side, left-hand side going towards the courthouse. And that's the whole objective of upgrading, trying to improve safety, is to have better lighting. So that gives you better lighting by far.
My daughter and I did the same thing, and I agree with everything everybody said.
Any other comments, suggestions?
Since the existing globes are clear, why are you buying new ones?
The type of globe, you can't just replace the bulb. These globes have the light already up in the structure, so what we'll be doing will be replacing the entire globe of 25 to 27 heads, so to speak,
Okay.
at the intersections. Those bulbs that are currently there are better than the ones we have down in Talleyrand Park, so we'll just transfer these LEDs down to Talleyrand and replace those, but it's a different globe. That's the purpose.
Okay. Any other discussions or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor to approve the streetlights at the YMCA for the clear globe lighting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Post same sign.
So are
Motion-
these all of the historic lights or just the ones at the crosswalk?
This will only replace the crosswalk areas, like at the last meeting I showed you the different intersections, John. So we're anticipating about 25 to 27. These new globes cost about approximately $1,200 a piece.
So obviously our resources is a limitation. We would like to expand as resources are available.
So we could put this into the capital project,
Yes.
because it would be nice to have all of them the
Yes, it
same
would.
throughout
Yeah,
town.
we look
So
for-
do it as a capital budget.
When we
yes.
do the streetscape, for example, in Spring and West Bishop, we'll replace those within that project. So we'll be able to pick up some others as we go
Okay.
along.
Look for grants and those kinds of
Okay.
things.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to new business. Ralph, you want to take some of these?
Sure, the first one is the fall 2022 Penn State Sustainability Projects. We'd like to know if there's a list that you'd like to submit for.
Can we move this to a work session?
Sure.
May I make a comment?
Yep.
Ilona Bauer, who is the one who made this request, says she needs this information by the end of the month because she needs the summer to work with the faculty.
The
So,
end of May?
yes,
Could we slide to the first week in June?
I guess, I can tell her that, but that was what her request was.
Well, I don't think we're prepared to do
Okay.
that this evening.
I'll tell her we'll have it after the first meeting.
So I'll make sure we're doing this in the first June meeting, first June work session and meeting.
Next one is just a memo that we're looking for funding for various projects, the police department renovations, Governor's Park Ball Field, and the Big Spring Structure Cover Project. We just want you to be aware that we're talking to various funding agencies and seeing what's out there, so we may be back for letters of support, but if there aren't any objections, we're going to look for funds that may be out there.
So I'll call for a motion and second to support efforts to find and pursue funding operations for projects related to the police station renovations, Governor's Park baseball field upgrades, and the Big Spring project. Do I have that motion?
I'll make that motion, Clayton.
Motion Deb Clayton. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Dan.
Second by Barb Dan. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving efforts to find and pursue funding opportunities for projects related to police station renovation, Governor's Park baseball field upgrades, and the Big Spring project signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's approved.
Next item is a Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG funding modification. I believe this is the one where it's unspent funds that are going to be redirected to auto repairs, is that correct?
That's correct.
It's funds that came in through the state, they're not our funds. They were originally made available for people who were having trouble paying rent. The funds were not exhausted, so the funding agency wants to redirect those to auto repairs. There's regulations or guidelines that apply or that are income-based, that those would still apply, but we would have to approve this redirecting to auto repairs.
So I'll call for a motion and second to approve the modifications presented to the Community Development Block Grant Program. Do I have that motion?
I'll make that motion, McKean. I'll second Purnell.
Sean McKean, and second by Purnell. Discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. What this would do would be going from direct residential assistance to repairing borough vehicles, is that correct?
No.
This would go for repairing vehicles for individuals, low income, that were impacted or affected negatively by COVID and had, car issues where they needed to get repairs, that they could get reimbursed for that. This was the funding the borough received. It was about $60,000, Joanne, and this was what Center Care was, not Center Care, it was
something like that.
Yeah, some agency in State College was managing the money. Only one person from the borough ended up utilizing the funding, and they had other funding too from the county. So they want to redirect it because they've been finding that they might be able to get rid of the remaining funds by helping people this way.
Okay. That I have no problem with, but I was thinking if we were switching from direct assistance to people to borough, that didn't seem copacetic to me. I have no problem with this.
Yeah, CDBG would never.
Probably had the same problem. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of supporting the Community Development Block Grant Program modification signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's approved.
Next item is a grant application with a local match of $33,000, or $33,210, which we would take out of the bulk water fund. This is the funds we believe would apply to the stormwater issue out of Parkview Heights off of Parkwood Drive in that area. And likewise, the next item, the Greenways Trails Recreation Program, is very similar. We'll take the first one, the DCED Greenways funding commitment.
So I'll call for a motion and second to approve the borough's commitment to fund $33,210 allocated from the borough's bulk water fund. Do I have that motion? Kent Bernier making the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Clayton.
Second, Deb Clayton. Discussion?
I just wanted to clarify for everybody that all you're doing here is approving a commitment letter to go into an application for a grant at this time. Council approved the borough to proceed with $40,000 to have Pannoni Associates proceed with doing the development, the design for the work out at Parkview Heights where we're having the water issues. So when we negotiated with them, we asked them if they could look for some funding opportunities. These next three, in addition to this one, the next three votes that you're taking are all just for grant applications that they're putting together to do for us so that we could potentially get some funding so that when the design is done, we can actually do the work.
So just to be clear, because I know this is going to affect the next couple of votes, this $33,210 is solely for the Parkview Heights Ballpark and Teener Field? Or is this for the Parkview Heights area near the apartment?
Yes.
And then secondly, there's an identical matching $33,210 $210 for the second one. So it's a total of $66,000?
But we're submitting 2 grants, hoping that we get one of them, okay? It will only take one grant to be able to do the work. And the work would be comprised, Joanne, from the sediment back by the apartments, cleaning all that out, coming down, going underneath Parkview Boulevard, underneath the road, digging a trench all the way behind the Teener League field so that the water drains under Summit and goes that way.
I think we've been
Clear it
talking
all
about
out. That's what one of the 2 grants, if we get one of them, it
It'll
would
do
do
the
all
whole
the
thing.
work.
So we wouldn't actually be spending $66,000.
No.
It'd just be 33, but you're putting it in two different
There's 2 different pots.
pots saying, here's what we'd love to have.
Yeah, there's 2 different
Just give us
applications.
one of them.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was confused about. Thank you.
Any other discussions?
Here we go, using the bulk water. I'm only kidding. Yeah, let's
Just
do
get this
it.
motion, get
Let's
this
do
one
it.
done, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so all those in favor of, let's see, where were we? Okay, all those in favor of the PA DCED for Greenway Trails and Recreation Program funding commitment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion's approved. Along with that, then we have a resolution, Greenway Trails and Recreation Program Grant Resolution number 05162-022-01. I'll call for a motion and second to approve the Greenway Trails and Recreation Program Grant Resolution 05162-022-01. Do I have a motion? Kent Bernier, motion, second.
I'll second.
All right.
Give it to Joanna.
Which Joanne, or Joanne or
The
Joanne?
Joanne, we give it to the other Joanne.
Johanna Sedgwick.
Okay, discussion?
So I just want to say that I think this is a good investment for the community, whether we do it this way or the other way, because it will help with the storm water issues in this part of town that we've been dealing with as long as I've been on council.
Yep. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the Greenway Trails and Recreation Program Grant Resolution number 5162022-01 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion against, the same. Motion passes. Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, I'm sorry. The next one is very similar to the Watershed Restoration Protection Program funding commitment letter. Same dollar amount, $33,210, just a different pot of funding. Asking for a motion and a second approval for this commitment.
So I'll call for that motion and second to approve the borough's commitment to fund $33,210 allocated from the borough's bulk water fund. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Clayton.
Deb Clayton, second.
I'll second, Dan.
By Barb Dan. Discussion?
Curiosity question for what it's worth. What happens if we get both of them?
We would only accept one.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of a letter to Pennsylvania DCED for Watershed Restoration and Protection Program funding commitment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Next one is a watershed the resolution that goes along with that application, 05/16/2022-02.
So I'll call for a motion and second to approve the Watershed Restoration and Protection Program Grant Resolution number 05162-022-02. I have a motion. Rita Purnell. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Joanne. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution number 05162-022-02, Watershed Restoration and Protection Program, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's approved. The next item is CATA Local Match Share Agreement and Resolution Number 05162-022-03. I'll call for a motion to approve the CATA Local Match Share Agreement and Resolution as stated, 05162-022-03. Motion?
I'll make that motion.
Deb Clayton, second.
Seconded.
Barb Dan. Discussion.
I know some of you are new to this process. Their budget is a fiscal year. They run July 1st to June 30th every year. They give us an operating number and a capital number. The operating right now will be $25,370 for operating, and then $3,439 for capital. They're spread into 4 payments. Each category is into 4 payments throughout the next year. The dates are in the resolution. We're agreeing to make those payments. And the service is, what it is, that they don't guarantee a certain number of runs. We have Catago now with COVID. A lot of the old process has changed with the fixed routes. We don't have a good handle on how the changes will be different in the future. We are not a formal partner with CATA. The Center Region municipalities are. We're like a subcategory, so we get what we get as far as service. But these are the numbers. These are decent numbers, and it's a financial commitment we've been making. But just to give you some background, it creeps up about 4 to 5% each year.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion for CATA for CATA's local match share agreement and resolution number 05162-022-03, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, we have consider items under goals and issues to be listed at the June 6th, 2022 meeting. I think I already have 3 on here that's probably going to fit into that slot. So if we need some more, we'll look at that when we do our agenda.
Sustainability.
I was going to say, you can take the stop bars at Crawford and Allegheny were painted this week, so you can take that off the
Yeah, there's a
list.
few things on that list that needs to be taken off. Yeah, we can update them at the next agenda meeting, probably be easier. But I did like the bigger print, at least you can read it. Next item is North Spring Street, 247 to 261, and that would be to shorten the current parking spaces to add the additional space. And I think we'll just let the administration take care of that and see what they can come back with for us. Next, we have public comment regarding items not on the agenda. Is there anybody that wants to speak to an item? You need your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Bernie Croker, 191 East Kirkland Street, Bellefonte, PA. Good to see you, neighbors. I just wanted to give you a brief report and leave you with 2 questions before I take off. The first one, the report would be that I had a great experience the week of May 6th through 8th. That was graduation weekend at Penn State. Things get a little crazy. We had short-term rental. We rented out our home to 10 people who enjoyed it very much. At least I think they did. I wasn't there, so I wouldn't know. But my wife and I walked back in when they were done. We're always a little nervous. We're not experienced with this, so we don't always walk in with 100% faith everything will be in order, but it was. In fact, it looked like it hadn't even been stayed in, so we were pleasantly surprised. They ran a dishwasher. The first question I had for myself was, why were they there? I mean, graduation was 10 miles away, and State College, why did they come to Bellefonte to hang out for a weekend? I think the reason was they wanted a residential experience in a residential neighborhood. They didn't want a waterfront experience or development experience. They just wanted a residence. One of the contact asked about my grill, and so I shared in an email about what he could do with my grill and where my utensils were. So he knew where everything was. That was a good move. And I think they had a good time. It was a good residential short-term rental. No problems at all. I haven't had any problems with my renters. The other thing I wanted to just leave you with as a question was just a quote that I had sent you in a letter. And by the way, I appreciate you reading it. It said, from the Pennsylvania Constitution, the inherent rights of mankind. This is written way back in 1915, so you have to pardon the language. But it said, inherent rights of mankind, all men are born equally free and independent and have certain inherent and indefeasible rights, among which are those of enjoying and defending life and liberty, of acquiring, possessing, and protecting property and reputation, and pursuing their own happiness. And just a few more paragraphs down, there's another line that says, the main legal property rights are the right of possession, the right of control, the right of exclusion, the right to derive income, and the right of disposition. So question 2 is just, what exactly does that mean? Just something to think about and ponder as we work through some of these items relating to short-term rentals. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Any other public comments regarding items not on the agenda?
Just a real quickie, just a reminder to everybody, the 2022 Pennsylvania Municipal League District Meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. Don graciously sent out the reminder with the registration this afternoon, so I did notice on the list that these PML sent me today that there wasn't anyone else from the borough. I'd love to have some of the others attend, so if you're interested and have the time, please click on the registration link, and I'll see you tomorrow.
So with that, Joanne, I did look at that, and I don't know if I'm going to have time tomorrow. I thought maybe I was too late to even do anything with it, but if it looks like it's broken into groups in a certain through that 2-hour process.
Yeah, at the very end is the district business. The first part is statewide, where they're going to talk about the legislative initiatives and what is going on with the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed last fall.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments? Not to the agenda. Okay, seeing none, I'll have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Kent, Vernier, motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Or Dan, all approved, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion against? We'll just approve that.